the next point, which is letter of credit. Yeah, still have some time. Letter of credit. Yeah, we're going to have some fun at the end of this. We're going to go back to the question before if you're not satisfied, and we'll have new questions. And I also have questions I prepared by myself with the answer that you might be interested at the end. Okay, so let's move on. Letter of credit is what we're going to deal with now. We have seen somehow that remittance is not always safe means for settlement of payment, or just settlement, if you like, at an international level. Like collection is somehow like that, being dealt with later. Why? Because it gives more protection to one party than the other. Okay, it gives more protection to one party than the other. Yet win-win situation is important in business. Especially if we care about long-term relationship, we build the relationship, we maintain the relationship, and we really go further in satisfying one another as parties. And that is what, if you want to do business in China, that is very, very important. Especially, I know that it's also important in your countries, for example, but I have to stress it for the case of, China. Okay. And to do that, as I said before, you need to firstly probably accept their terms of payment, like what they might prefer. For 1 or 2 orders, you go with that. And then a little later, you might request changes because trust is already there. Okay. You trust each other, meaning that you start with a little sacrifice on your side, and then later, when they trust you, then they even probably give you very, very good terms that you are wondering, like, with that kind of suggestion, can you really get money? That's your question. Can you get money? You ask your supplier, because it's really a kind of a selfless transaction that is happening once there is trust somewhere, even though we are talking about business. Okay, so with the development of international trade, however, if we are relating to this talk to the remittance that we are saying it is not perfect, even though it's preferred somehow. So bank credits gets involved in settlement of payments, which provides it with more secure transactions. Okay, secure transactions that is needed to feel confident and to be able to really stay in the market and to order whatever we really want to order from any other countries. From any country, including China. As I said before, even though we talked about remittance being preferred by the majority of suppliers in China, you can also go with other methods of payment. You can go with letters of credit. You can go with collection, as we will see a little later. All right. So letters of credit is now the most frequently used in the settlement of payment in international trade. Okay. At the international level, it's like that, but not in China. Okay. So at international level, it's very popular, but in China, for example, it's mixed, and it takes more of others than here if you don't have the good relationship. Okay, if you have the relationship, you know how to build that. You will never know that China is using more remittance than They do. You don't know that. You just think right from the beginning that they are in love with letters of credit. Probably they are in love with collection because it's anywhere. All right. Yes. Anywhere because China is a huge country. Now, one city is like one country in other places. So it's unreasonable to say that I cannot do business with China because they use more of a remittance than anything else. That's very, very not reasonable because of the, how big the population is and how many companies we have here. Now we're starting with the conceptual framework that you usually hear in schools, universities, or whatever. All right. We start with that. It's important because we are teachers or probably students. If you are doing research, publish papers or whatever, we are always referring to conceptual framework. But what makes our work, publication work interesting is real life cases. So we need to know both, for example. And here we are having even three types. As we said before, we have the conceptual framework. We have the procedure, the financial transactions in bankings, and we have what is happening in business applications. These are the things we are talking about in the seminar. So now let's see what schools are teaching us. Firstly, if I have to start with this chart, at least one of them, because you're probably taking the position of an importer, then I will explain this chart here from the importer perspective. So as an importer, what you're gonna do first is to do some market research. Okay, that's what I said. It's relating to the question our friend there asked. I'm sorry, I didn't take the name. But market research is very, very important. Finding what you want, where you can find it, what is, as you said, biggest company producing it, who are getting those items most than the others, monopolizing the market. What is the pricing? What makes pricing here cheaper than there? For example, what makes pricing in Nanning cheaper than it is in Shenzhen? Probably because Shenzhen is a lot more, let's say, developed than Nanning. It's not really a mistake to say that, for example. Then it's much more expensive there, but you buy it from Nanning, you buy it from Guangzhou. Guangzhou is a place where a lot of people do business. In Guangdong province, Guangzhou, if you want materials for construction, you go to Foshan. I'm not sure if I pronounced that well, Foshan. And even in Guangzhou itself, you have to be careful. If you come to China, it happened to me when I came here. I went to this Baijin Lu, or I don't know, I don't really remember. And I was buying things and I found that, oh, very expensive. Guangzhou is a place for commerce and things, and these are expensive. That's what I had in mind. But the thing is, there are special places where to buy things. If you want to buy toys, there's a place for that. If you want to, there are two places, for example. One is commercial place, international trade or whatever. The other one is for the local people who don't care about, time. They don't care about, once they want to buy it, they buy it in the neighborhood. Even though it's expensive, they buy it. That's one reason. Or if they go to the place where it is cheap, those people do not sell things per item. You can't get one. They are in bulk. You can get a lot and then you can have it. Unless your family is in need of maybe one container of goods, you're not going to get it. But there's always negotiation. You can get something. Again, probably with Guanxi. All right. So research, then find out where you can get what you want. All right. And then that is in the preparation phase, preparation for exporting, right? Yeah, preparation for exporting, because when you are importing, you are going to order export after. You say, send me what I want. Then formulate import plan. You're importing, formulate that plan, like I'm gonna do this, 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 this. And then you come to credit information. Credit information for yourself, you know, in reference to what you have researched on. And then you inquire. This is a business negotiation that we have after that. And then you ask, because you've done the research, you've done, you know, a kind of reference to yourself, how much you have. And then there comes the business negotiations. You inquire after the company. So I saw online that you have this and this. And then you like you make an offer. I'm going to give you this. How about are you going to accept my offer or not? I in my country, this item sell, but you know, not at this season or whatever. So I can't really buy this in the what is it? The quote you have or the price list you have on your website, but this is what I can do. Okay, so you probably have a reply after that, where you have a counter offer, and then they might say, well, I like your pricing, but let's have an adjustment in shipment or whatever, and then we do business together. There's acceptance later, and then you move on to the phase of fulfillment of a contract, signing a contract after knowing everything, applying for import license. If the company is not having that, okay, you can also do it that way for some reasons and some cases. So the person who is selling, of course, is having export license, but you are the one who is applying for import license, okay, depending on how much items you are going to receive. Some people have a company somewhere and then they don't have to apply for this. They use our licenses, but you need to find whether that is legal or not. Then, because we're talking about letter of credit, then there comes that paper, opening that, applying for it. If you are the one who is applying, but the exporter can also apply for that for you, if that's the requirement somewhere. Fulfillment of contract is also taken into consideration of charting and space booking. So this is just to sketch out everything, and then finding out whether there are spaces of delivery in certain transportation, means of transportation. Then you have to find that out. And then delivery, of course, if you are an importer, delivery is not really done alone by yourself, but you have to work with the exporter to find out when delivery is possible. And then the insurance, let's say that you are going with the letter of credit. Letters of credit might require insurance going with it, for example, because there is payment which is not going to be done right away, okay? So for the importer, for the exporter, they might require some kind of insurance, or they might buy the insurance themselves, or they ask you to buy the insurance, depending on the terms of sales you are, you know, agreeing with. Then you track goods. There's tracking modes now. You go online and find out where your goods are. But this can be a service for banks also. Banks can track your goods if you are really in a big operations. Then you pay a bank and they do that for you. They can track goods. They can track bill of lading. They can find out a lot of other things. And then arrival, when is it arriving? You know, those declaring discharge, settlement is what you have here. At arrival time or before the time, but in when you are using a letter of credit, the settlement is always delayed. That's why letter of credit is not very good for some suppliers. Like said before, those people who are accepting remittance or prefer remittance, they see that the settlement for letter of credit, the money itself, the paper is there as soon as possible, but the money is going to take time. And that's why it is safe for the importer. The importer is the one who is like, oh, okay, I don't have to pay now, so I'm gonna wait, like that. So claims, if needed, that's what you have somewhere here. So the settlement here is from you as an importer, which is, as you can see, everything is almost done, and then you have the settlement. Okay, so that is for you, for example, which is important for someone who is taking things from, buying things from overseas. Now, the definition, even though I have already given you something relating to what it is, we're revisiting that now. International trade practice takes this also, letter of credit, which can be seen as document by which a bank, with your request, with your demand of the importer, promises to affect the payment of goods to the exporter. So the document is given to the importer to make the payment. So that's basically the idea of this. But if you go into details, can you still see me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's okay.
Wait.
Yes.
Okay. So letters of credit are one of the most secure instruments available in international trade transactions because it is what we call commitment by bank then on behalf of the buyer, that payment will be done to exporter. It's a kind of a promise written in letter, provided that the terms and conditions stated in the letter of credit has been met. So the bank, that's what the bank needs. Like, as long as you can fulfill all the requirements of the banks, then they formalize the promise that they will take care of the documentation as verified through the presentation of all required documents. Okay, so to go a little faster into this definition, like the bank is promising to the exporter that somebody will pay, right? Let's say the bank of the buyer is saying that this guy, we checked his credit, he's good, he's he's not going to have any problem with you, and then you are trusting in that. Every letters are there, and those letters are given to you, the documents. And then since it is a promise, it means later the importer is going to pay you. Okay, and somewhere in this transaction, if you can't pay, one bank will pay, depending on what kind of letter of credit is chosen. Okay, and we'll see those type a little later. That's what we need to know now. All right, that's why it is safe, for example, for the buyer, but it's slow. That's why it is not preferred by a lot of people who need speed in getting money. All right. So the buyer pays his or her bank to render the service. Of course, the buyer is paying certain percentage to the bank just for the guarantee for these, saying that it will be paid. All right. And usually the buyer probably even having an account there, but he's not going to use all of his money for this transaction. It just needs a promise from this bank that it will be paid and he will pay later. But it means that he's paying the supplier and he's also paying the bank that is guaranteeing the transaction. He's paying a little fees there. Letter credit is usually reliable credit information about the foreign buyer is difficult to obtain. Okay, but the exporter is satisfied with the creditworthiness of the buyer's foreign bank because, as I said before, there's information from the buyer's bank. There is documents given by them to tell your bank, for example, my bank, if you are the buyer, I'm in China here, I have a bank and you have a bank in Cambodia. Let's use Cambodia because that's the guy that talked to me there, I remember. So then we are using letter of credit. Then me in China, I get to my bank and then my bank is getting to your bank somewhere in Cambodia. And then the bank in there is promising to pay, promising the credit will be paid by the clients, by their clients, by the buyer. And later on, if there is any problem, even my bank here will be paying me. Okay, my bank in China will pay me, or the bank in your country will pay me through the bank here in China. Like that. So there's a guarantee by banks, but banks are not doing that. Their focus is just to guarantee. They are getting money because of their promise that the payment will be done by the buyer later. That's how it works. So not necessarily that those banks are paying, all right? They are just guaranteeing. But depending on your letter of credit, then if this guy, the buyer is having problem later, then one of those banks will pay you. And then, well, of course, that will make his fees very high when he will pay them back. There is a kind of, fees for the documentation, the promise given before that you didn't fulfill. And there's also fees for you being late for the payment. That's why we need to be careful. So I talked about the functions and everything there. Now, let's talk about the parties involved. The applicant is the first one there, who is usually the importer. The one who is doing business, the one who is going to delay payment, is the one who is going to apply for this, letter of credit, saying that he needs it and he can pay for it, and he will pay later for the supplier, but the bank probably is being to be paid right away, depending on the contract with the bank itself. Now, next, the issuing bank, which opens the letter of credit upon the request of the importer. So the issuing bank is the one who is giving this letter of credit. Okay, so basically, if there is a problem, this issuing bank is the one paying the client who is not being paid by the importer, which is the exporter. The exporter is the one who is to be paid, and the issuing bank is the one who is going to pay for him later if there's a problem. But basically, he's just going to provide letters that the importer can pay later. Next, I put it in a different color here because not so important. Sometimes combined with the other bank here as one, meaning that the issuing bank can be the advising bank and can be the negotiating bank and confirming bank. But if the operation is very, very big, then these are different banks. The advising bank or notifying bank, which is authorized by the issuing bank to transfer the letter of credit to the exporter bank, that's the one. The beneficiary is the one who is getting paid at last or somewhere, okay? So this is usually the exporter. Negotiating bank, which is willing to buy the documentary draft drawn by the beneficiary, usually on discount. If, let's say, for example, the buyer cannot fulfill his promises, yet the goods have been sent, then the goods are sold in between the way. It's not going to reach the guy who is importing. It's not going to reach Cambodia. So me, for example, I can take a decision like I will sell my goods before it reaches Cambodia, and I will get in touch with a negotiating bank. Then probably it's not as expensive as before, but it can happen. The paying bank, which is designated by the letter of credit to pay the draft. All right. So the draft, when something is turned into money, for the papers, the document is turned into money for the the beneficiary. So the paying bank is the one who is going to make that. The confirming bank, on the other hand, is the one who is asked by the issuing bank to confirm the letter of credit. Confirmation, check in credit worthiness, check in authentication of everything, check in credit history or whatever, and then they confirm. All right. As I said before, some of these are small services, so they can be done. A lot of this can be done just one bank. All right. So that's where it is. And then if we say that a lot of this can be done by one bank, then it can be narrowed down to this one here, to this as I said here, parties involved in brief. Okay, we make it simple. If you go to universities, professors make things very difficult because they think that firstly they create books. Books can be taking a lot of pages if you have a lot of ideas. So you have details here and there, and it's spinning. Like if you're finding out like what is the real thing here, real life situation, probably it's not really in the book that you are using in school, right? Or the book is too detailed. All right. Just a little bit of the book is enough to carry out an operation. Then here are just the essentials in this. The seller, the exporter, the buyer, the importer, the issuing bank is the one who is giving the letter, and then the advising bank can be the paying bank. That's where it is. If a bank has confirmed the letter of credit, it holds itself responsible for the negotiation of the payment or the payment of the letter of credit. And the circulation is just like this. Basically, you have a contract. The contract is, concluded by the seller and the buyer. And then the buyer is sending an application to his bank or her bank, which is what we call issuing bank. And the issuing bank is transferring the document into the advising bank. The advising bank, which is also the one who is paying if they need to pay. But as I said before, in this, you don't really, the bank is not supposed to really pay the seller, but they just guarantee the letter. And then the buyer is paying later. But then the one who is getting the buyer, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sorry. The seller, yeah, the buyer is paying the buyer because he's the one who is getting the goods later. He's the one who is paying the seller to a bank of his designation. And then at that time, by the payment is done, the letters have been given to him, the documents have been given to him and to the buyer to make the buyer confident that he's going to be paid after some time. All right, the main contents of this are the parties involved and the remarks about the letter of credit, the type, the number, the issuing date in there, the amount of the letter of credit, the amount of the money being placed in it, the clauses of bill of exchange. I told you about bill of exchange yesterday, and a bill of exchange is playing a huge role in this letter of credit. It can play a role individually. I mean, by itself, it can also be used with other documents, and there are names for those. So that's why it is here. Okay, the clauses, you have all these in the clauses, like the invoices to be included in there, information relating to invoice, bill of lading, insurance policy. Bill of lading, as we said, you cannot get your goods from a port of destination without a bill of lading. Insurance policy, if needed. Packing list, all right, packing list. A bill of lading is somehow in some countries can replace packing list. But packing list can be very, very detailed. That's why we almost always in need of it. Okay. Certificate of origin is also important. Why do we need certificate of origin? In some countries, if you are selling, let's say that you are getting, products from, let's say China, for example. You get the products, and this product is special in China. Special. Let me give you a very simple one. Have you heard of Reiganmian? Reiganmian is hot, dry noodles. And in China, it's very famous in a city named Wuhan. So even though the product is from China, a lot of people are buying Reiganmian in packages, all right? So if you get it from here, and then you want to see the quality of Reiganmian, the best quality of Reiganmian is from Wuhan, but it's also probably, created or done somewhere else, like Nanning or Guangzhou or whatever. Then for the certificate of origin will tell this is Reiganmian from Wuhan or from Beijing. Beijing is the capital of China, but it doesn't mean that it can create a good Reiganmian. So it's included. It's more to you than to the customs, I guess. But if there is any clause in the contract saying that the certificate of origin has to be included, then you have a problem without it. Then to defer, the Reiganmian is from Wuhan, then you are happy. If it is not from Wuhan, that can be a problem. You see the contract, if the one who is paying attention to that is not going to agree, like, oh, okay, you have Reiganmian, but it's not from Wuhan, so I don't need it. So that's what they say. Inspection certificate, how good the Reiganmian is, what are the ingredients? Is it really the original ingredients, or you, instead of using sesame, I'm not very sure what, let's say peanuts. If you use peanuts in there and you have something else, then probably it's not going to be okay. So also required, some copies of documents required are description of goods, specifications, quantity, packing, packing qualities. Also, is it in plastic bag or a kind of wood or whatever, unit price, total amount, mode of transportation, on let's say by road, by air, the sea, place of unloading, where is it? So these are all required. Particular clauses, such as special provisions about the deal in accordance with particular business or political situation of the importing country, probably is important. All right. Yes, in the U.S., for example, it's very, it can be, if you talk about that political situation that can harm your business, one president is there and he opens up, okay, like Obama was there, and then a lot of people were doing business. When Trump was coming over, then he said, I'm not doing business here, not doing business there, and everything is closed down. All right. So in that case, there's a problem. If we talk about, country or stable in terms of political situation, China is probably the top one. So those are not going to be a problem when you are specifying those. Guarantee clauses of the issuing bank. The issuing bank is the one who is given the letter of credit, issuing it, promising that somebody will pay. And if that person is not paying, then probably the bank is paying. Then that kind of clause is to be included, which testifies that the issuing bank will hold itself responsible for the payment to the beneficiary or the holder of the draft. That's what it means. Okay. So in terms of types, because we talked